I am so glad to have you guys here with me today. I'm excited about my next guest. We actually got connected through a mutual friend. I believe it was Janice Porter, who is also a podcast host. We're together in Send Out Cards. And then Janice and I are also members of Team Referral Network. So Kelly and I got together on a Zoom call, and it was quite a connection. First, she got to see what life was like for me with chaos because we had a visitor who was on our call at the same time because I had double booked something. So it ended up being a great meeting. We all found out what we had in common, all of us being only children. And it was just a fun opportunity for us to connect. And needless to say, out of that connection, I'm like, hey, you have to come and join me on my podcast. So she agreed, and I'm so happy to have her here today. So before we get into her interview, we are going to give Kelly the opportunity to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her.
Hey everyone, it's lovely to be here. I think I've just, I don't know, like fallen in love with you as a business professional. I just feel you have, Lachelle, the biggest heart and this wise mama soul that I just so admire. So thank you for having me.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
my name is Kelly Nault from joyfullyparenting.com. And I was that adult 20-year-old that a lot of parents love to hate because in my 20s, I worked with kids and quite frankly thought I could parent better than a lot of parents. So I don't know if any of you out there have had that experience. People giving you that helpful advice, or it could be a mom-in-law where you feel really judged. And that was where I was at. And I kind of came by it honestly, though. I was working with children with special needs that others had given up on, and I got really good at it. So good, I kind of got a big ego. Humility was maybe not in my vocabulary, unfortunately. And so the day a new file came across my desk, it was two brothers. No one would work with them. The last person who did, they beat up on the public bus. And their mom was ready to give up one for adoption. And in terms of chaos, it was really off the charts. But I was 20. I knew lots. I went in there thinking this will be a piece of cake. But the night a dessert literally goes flying past my head, I was like, okay, maybe I'm way in over my head. My dad begged me to quit.
Mhm.
Um, but fortunately, I'm so stubborn. I'm a bit of a pig-headed woman. So I stayed, but what happened was I got what a lot of parents don't get. I was so blessed to be doing my master's in counseling psychology, and I was working with two of the very best parenting experts in the field. One was Dr. Gary McKay, who wrote Systematic Training for Effective Parenting in the 70s. He co-authored that, but it had sold, I don't know, 9 million copies or some crazy thing like that. And then Jane Nelson, who started Positive Discipline, which a lot of parents are familiar with. But they were like, I had to bat phone. And so when things were like crazy, I would pick up the phone. I'm like, now what do I do? Because when they weren't bouncing off the walls, they were literally pounding on them. And I was kind of losing my mind at times. I'm like, what have I done? Because I was living with them as well. And oh, the thing I probably didn't mention is they were both blind from birth. And so they would, yeah, they would have given Helen Keller a run for her money. But what was fascinating was we would go to the playground, and I know that there's a lot of moms out there who feel a lot of guilt, especially if your child makes you look really bad in public. I had that all the time.
Right.
But even worse than that was that like people would be like, oh, what is that woman doing to them? That those poor children, they're blind and they'd have their canes. But in terms of temper tantrums and meltdowns, especially in malls, I can remember one in front of McDonald's in the food fair. And I had one of the older boy, it's like, order me my burger. And everyone, like silence, as I had like hundreds of eyewitnesses. And I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to call child services. What do I do? But fortunately, through a huge turnaround in my approach And none of us, now that I am a parent, none of us, our kids come with those manuals, and we don't learn this in school. But the thing that I find fascinating, I'm sure you can relate to this, Lachelle, is that each child you add comes with a different personality. And so something that may have worked fantastically well for one kid, you're like hitting you against the head. You're like, what? Like, no, no, no. This is how we do the dance. This is how our family operates.
So
And they
true.
have the audacity to test it. Can you relate
Right.
to that?
Yes,
Lish-
I can. And I think that, that is one of the things that kind of gives us that confidence. It's like, oh, I can handle this. I know what parenting is about. Bring it on. One more child. I mean, that's not going to make that great of an impact. But, this person is a visual learner and you are more tactile. So you're just in this situation of, the more you speak, the more your words aren't heard because you are talking a foreign language on something that they can't even relate to. So, yes.
Yeah. I like to think about it as kind of like every child comes in with a different dance. So
I
you can be
like that.
doing like the tango and all into that. And the other kid is like, what? I'm doing hip hop. Like, are you
Right.
kidding me? Like, what are you doing? So, we're stepping on each other's toes.
Right.
So what was really cool was that when we were on the playground, I had other parents say, what did you do? Like, okay, I actually want you guys over for a play date now. And so I was asked to do parenting workshops and then got really good at doing parenting education. So I actually got to speak with 1 million moms, going nationwide for a week-long media blitz, which is I feel so honored to do. But the thing I've learned about moms who are my heroes in my life is that, first of all, parenting is so much more difficult today. Can we say, um, you know, pandemic, everyone? Like,
Yeah.
and so things keep hitting us. And so I feel that the distractions are huge, the overwhelm is huge. And, I know you can relate to this. This is another thing we have in common. I totally melted down as well in terms of my health. And so many of us, I'm there, and I don't know if you're there. I think you are,
Yeah.
a recovering people pleaser. You know,
Yeah.
you know, thank the Lord I am recovering, and I'm so grateful for that. But
Right.
it still creeps in, and
Yeah.
because of that, it's like, oh yeah, I can take on one thing. Oh,
Right.
ask for help. No, 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 I don't do that. That is not my thing. And so take on one thing, one thing. I had chronic fatigue, and
Mhm.
then fibromyalgia, where
Mhm.
no one can figure things out. And so I've really pivoted so much, and come up with something I call the Smart Mom path, which I think we chatted about. But for me,
Each of us
smart,
having acronyms. Yeah.
yeah, but for me, smart means simple, meaningful actions repeated over time.
I love
And it
that.
is those simple things. But if we don't have the whole framework for it, and
Hmm.
often many of us, I sure needed it, to have some hand holding while we go
Hmm.
along with it, often you know, we're either embarrassed and feel a lot of shame or a lot of guilt,
Hmm.
or we're just living in chaos. Um,
Hmm.
when I wrote my first book years ago, I called it "When You're About to Go Off the Deep End, Don't Take Your Kids with You."
Oh,
And many of us, understandably, when we are in overwhelm and in survival mode and fear and just monster mom
so true.
mentality,
Hmm.
and for some of us, we do that monster mom on the inside. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're yelling and shouting and hitting, or sometimes it's going on in here and we're fuming and can kind of keep it together. But we know that tension's there. We know that we're nagging. We know that we're a bit shorter than we want. But the thing that I think really kills us, and it might have been for you, your turnaround, I know it was for me, it's like when you have those moments when you're looking at a child's face where you've gone too far, or that you're not being the mother they deserve to have, and thinking about that almost brings tears to my eyes, because motherhood, the blessing in it, and it's a huge one, is it allows us to be better people than what we already are. Is it
Right.
easy? Heck no. Is it fun? Sometimes not. But the truth of the matter is, I think we put way too much pressure on ourselves and don't ask for the help we need, before we hit that wall. And, I believe that temper tantrums and meltdowns are a dedicated mom's greatest gift, because that's often when we finally say, okay, here, I'm using this white flag, I surrender, I give up, where we do hit rock bottom. Yeah. So, anyways, those are some of the things that are important to me. And I feel very passionate and honored to work with moms and help them get a strategic plan in place, what I call their smart mom plan, but that it's customized for them
I love
and
that.
for their personality as well. Because
Hmm.
there's all these fabulous parenting tips out there.
Hmm.
And I used to give them all on radio and television and in interviews. And then I realized, but when the baby poop's hitting the fan
Hmm.
and you're in those moments, we resort to our defaults.
Hmm.
And if it's not a match with something that we can get excited about, we don't tend to do it.
Right.
And so that customized, I kind of see it as like a customized reboot for the stress in the home. That's kind of more my superpower, is really getting to the heart of the matter, because I think you can go to all these experts
Hmm.
and go around the issues,
Hmm.
and you can feel really good about it for a while, but then
Hmm.
you're like, why are we dealing with the same problem over and over again? Or it's a new problem, but I'm still feeling the same. I'm still out of control and overwhelmed.
I
Anyways,
love that.
I talked your ear off. Yeah, you got to
You
cut
did
me off.
great. You brought out so many, yes, so many talking points. I think the first thing is, you talked about having an ego because you were able to recognize the things you did good. And it turned into a situation where you're very confident doing the job you do. So, what was it that just made that transformation from that ego to actually the feeling of, adding value and recognizing how you can transform your approach to empower the people that you're helping?
Good question. Woo.
Hmm.
For me with the ego, I think it's just when we rub up against something that we're not doing well suddenly, especially like I've
Mm.
worked with a lot of moms who are really good in their careers, say, and then they
Mhm.
get a child and then they're at home and then suddenly they're feeling undone because they're like, why I should know how to do this. So
Mhm.
I think getting rid of that belief that you should know how to do it and you can do it on your own. You're doing this gig solo. Because we've all heard it takes a village to raise a child, but I don't think we've really heard that it takes a village to raise a mom
Right.
and to support a mom.
Mhm.
And that's really key for me. One of the first steps in my Smart Mom program, I call it the Love Foundation, which is living our values every day. But I find that many of us, myself included, the old people pleaser here,
Mhm.
often adopt other values of what it looks like. So we're on Facebook and we see all the other moms on there with their great, highlight reels, and we're like, oh yeah, we should be signing them up for this and we should be doing that. But really, if we stop and get perspective, that's really not what is feeding our values. Or it could be at the start, but then too much is too much. And it's
Right.
not feeding the peace we want in our family. It's not feeding the mutual respect we want in our family.
Mhm.
So, anyways, does that answer your question?
Absolutely, because I think, a lot of people have that point where they're at now. It's like, they have gotten comfortable with whatever their job is, or, their position in a certain company. And now with this pandemic, that's no longer an issue. So the things that they were comfortable with, having that position, that knowledge and confidence surrounding that particular situation, they're in a point where they have to reframe. They have to admit, oh, I don't know this or know that. And so making that transition, I think that's very key to point that out, because it may not be with parenting, but it could be with something else that can still be very impactful when it comes to putting that ego down and knowing how to do it in a way that serves you. So I really get that.
And that's one of the things I admire about you. There's so many things I admire about you, but I just see how how much of humility you bring to things.
Mhm.
And for me, I kind of look at it, when I'm working with children or their parents, it's like, okay, how can we be scientists? How can we get
Mhm.
curious about this rather than,
Mhm.
oh, I know it, I've written the book on it. And we all do it, to a
Mhm.
certain degree.
Mhm.
And I do, like you bringing up the virus and dealing with that. I feel like all of us now are in this giant snow globe and it's just shaking, you know? And depending, and then sometimes it kind of settles and you see that beautiful snow coming down. You're like,
Right.
okay, I can take a breather. But then it's like, okay, school's back in. And you're like, okay, do I do mass? Do I not do mass? And then it's, and then you're worried about finances, and so it's coming at us so hard hitting. And for me, the
Mhm.
opportunity is to really get clear on what parenting style are you going to bring, because,
Mhm.
you know, as humans, I think we can take more and take more and take more when things are mediocre or even
Mhm.
worse, not great
Mhm.
at all. But we're like, yeah, we can do this. Yeah, we can do this. We put more in our backpack, and then we break down and we're no good to anyone. And that's not a pretty picture. Mom burnout is not a pretty picture. And you know it. I know it.
Absolutely. So
Right?
true. And I think you brought up a good point because, when it comes from the lens of people pleasing, it's really disempowering because if you're pleasing others, it's like you are allowing them to dictate what makes you happy or doesn't make you happy based on what makes them happy. So that can change. One minute it could be they're in a good mood, then you're in a good mood. But then if they're not in a good mood and something that they enjoyed yesterday, the next day they don't enjoy, and then you're trying to figure that out. So it's this constant battle of trying to figure out what is going to make this person happy instead of looking within and saying, hey, let me be happy first. And then you could see, oh, they're not happy. Well, let me give them their space and I'm going to go with somebody else who
Yeah.
is happy,
Yeah.
and fool with them later on, right?
One of the things I'm really excited about right now, just in terms of you talking about what makes us happy and who are we now, who do we
Mm-hmm.
want to be. I created something called "What's Your Mom" type quiz, and actually, I
Mm-hmm.
haven't had you do it yet, so I would love to have you do that.
Absolutely. I would love to.
Okay. So, it's either on my joyfullyparenting.com site or momtypequiz.com. But
Okay.
I find that there's a lot of moms, and we've all been there. We can flip flop, but I'll tell you one of them, which is called Monster Mom. And her
Mm.
alter ego, so all of them have a Hollywood star or a superhero. And
Okay.
hers is called She-Hulk, which is, do you remember the Incredible Hulk?
Yeah.
Well, there's a She-Hulk out there that a lot of moms don't know, but she's really smart. She's actually a lawyer in New York.
Okay.
But when she gets mad, it's like, and I think that, some of us have that when we get to that point. But it's really cool because with She-Hulk, she has the intelligence to figure out, because she has a real sense of justice. And I think a lot of us moms can, where it's like, well, you can't say that to me. You can't talk to me like that.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of it comes from that sense of justice. Like I really have a righteous side. I completely admit it. And
That's right.
you do too, right? It's like, hey, wait a minute. Where are you going? Right? Where are you going with this? So, but it's finding those ways. I call it disciplina parenting, where dis- discipline comes from the Latin root of disciplina, which is to teach. So if we put on our teacher hat to figure out, okay, they obviously don't know how to do this well yet. How are we going to teach them? Again, you can shift that mindset around, but also the mindset of what's going to bring happiness to the whole here without me giving up who I am, without me laying down like a carpet and having everybody walk over me. Yeah, kind of
Oh,
important.
so true. I think that's true. And I think, there's that element, just like when it comes to being an entrepreneur, you have this idea that, oh, I can help everybody. What I do is very important. Everybody can benefit from this. And we don't niche down, to understand that, yeah, you can help everybody, but everybody may not get value from what you're doing. You know,
Everyone
there's
may
people.
not like you.
Hmm.
And everyone may not like you, which is a tough one.
Absolutely.
As a tough one I've had to deal with because I just thought I'm a likable person. Why would people not like me? And then you get this like hate comment on YouTube. You're like, oh, okay. Yeah. So sorry if anyone's listening right now. I don't need more of those comments. I am a recovering people pleaser, but I still like the thumbs up and to
So
focus
true.
on what you like.
Yeah,
Anyway.
and I think that it's just from the lens, like what you said, we feel like we are a certain way, and this is key because we assume we're projecting certain things, right? So when you're in this ego mindset, it's like, oh, I want what's best for them. What I'm telling them is right. They don't know what they're doing. Let me help them out. So it comes from the platform of, I have all the answers, they need me. I'm helping them to get themselves together. Just that judgment. And being on the other side, it is just asking the right questions because many times people are walking around in circles and nobody really is recognizing that everyone's walking in circles because we're all walking in circles. But when you decide to say, I'm stepping out of the ring, and I'm going to do something different because walking in these circles is not giving me what I want, then you're able to have some reflection and some strategies. So when you see people in circles, you begin to ask them questions. Have you been noticing that you're seeing the same thing? Have you noticed there's patterns to this? Or have you noticed that you can probably have an answer for somebody before they even speak because you're dealing with this over and over again? So you ask them the questions and then they realize, you know what? I'm walking in circles. Do you know how I can get out of this? And it's a totally different conversation rather than saying, hey, you know what? You're walking in circles. No, I'm not. Yes,
Yeah.
you are. No, I'm not. Then you're in circles, right?
Then you're in circles. Totally. And I think that it's neat you bring that up because that's so much like parenting. I think a lot of parents go in think with that judgment of, oh,
Hmm.
my child is doing that because of XYZ. And often it's not the case. One of the ones, do we have time for a really quick story?
Oh, yeah.
I have one of the boys years and years ago, I was going to school. It was like the first week and he totally is having a meltdown with one of the other kids outside before they're going into the classroom. And I'm on my way to the car and I'm almost like sprinting because I'm thinking, I don't want anyone to know that I am with that
The
child
mother,
who is
right?
having an award-winning meltdown right now. Because I'd already said goodbye, and I don't know, one child said something to them, and that was it. And I don't know. Anyways, it was about a backpack. That's all I know. Anyways, but it was interesting because for a long time I thought, oh my gosh, he's melting down and he needs help and we're doing all of that. And it wasn't until after that I actually realized that a lot of his meltdowns he actually really enjoyed, which sounds great, not for many kids, but
Oh, I know.
some was
Hmm.
just like, let me pour on the waterworks and let me get all the attention looking at me. And it
So
was
true.
interesting when I finally looked at that. I'm like, okay, I've been thinking this is a problem for him. It's not a problem at all. He likes
Right.
it. This is the
Exactly.
solution to another problem he has.
So true. So
So,
true.
so I think that until we take that step back, have for some of us, I needed it, some help to get perspective on what was really going on. We can be, as you say, going in those circles, feeling mom burnout or just monster mom, you know. So yes, it
Yeah,
is.
and I think also, you bring up the thing about the pressure of feeling like, we have to have all the answers. Now, so in my case, in your case too, we're both only children. So the dynamics of even sibling rivalry, really navigating through that. I mean, there were times that I'm sad because I listen to my kids and it's like, man, they're so mean to each other. Do they love each other? I'm going around feeling sadness and then they're over it. You know what I mean? They say crazy stuff. 5 minutes later, it's like it never even happened. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? And I'm over here like a basket case. oh, they don't love each other. My husband's like, look, that's what siblings do, you know? So even that dynamic of not really understanding, you know, how they are navigating through relationships and, you know, being able to express themselves, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, you know, being able to be comfortable in their own homes, their own skin, you know, expressing their viewpoints. So there's so many different dynamics, you know, but when you get to that point of where you are coming out of your knowledge and having this ego, like, hey, you just don't talk to each other like that, or, you know, whatever. And it's like, you know, knowing the lens that you're looking through can really have an impact because, you know, they could go around and think, man, something's wrong with me if I advocate for myself, you know, whereas I wasn't doing that. I was people pleasing. So when I see them doing something, it's like, wait a minute, you guys are just too far left or right or whatever. So I think that's a really good point that you bring up.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking too that the other thing I've seen is that sometimes when parents, I've noticed, come in and say, "Oh, it's okay, come on over," and are so sympathetic, what I've
Hmm.
seen is oftentimes a child can think, oh, okay, this is how I get that extra attention. This is who I am. I need
Hmm.
somebody else to come in and constantly rescue me. It's not to not
Right.
be there for our kids, but it's that constant rescuer. And if you're the rescuer for your child, then your child sometimes will go into that victim mindset.
Right.
And going into a victim mindset in this day and age through schools or homeschooling or just navigating is also not a healthy lens to see the world through, right? And so for
So
me,
true.
that finding that Goldilocks balance and
Hmm.
parenting of finding out how you can still be strong,
Hmm.
but with that humility,
Hmm.
but also direct when you need to direct and let go when you need to let go. And that for me is the magic sauce. That's why when I was building that smart mom path, I felt like it needed to be built from the bottom up. Because if you don't have that foundation, if your health isn't together, as you know, if everything else doesn't matter,
Right.
and it won't stick either. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, that brings up like a story. This just happened this morning. So I have a fifth grader. He's doing e-learning. So normally he's just doing his own thing, plugging away. So he gets real frustrated and he's like, I don't know if I'm gonna go to the next grade. So, you know, he's in fifth grade. And I said, well, what's the problem? And he said, I just don't understand this math. And I said, well, what is it that you don't understand? And he said, well, we're on division and I'm just not good at it. And I said, okay. I said, well, have you talked to the teacher about it? And so he's like, no, I just don't know. And he said, it's just something that I'm not comfortable with or something. And I said, well, you know, learning is how you progress in life. You know, I said, when you started doing multiplication tables, you didn't know those either. You had to learn them. So
Mm-hmm.
part of that learning process is asking questions and figuring out, oh, I know this part of it, but this part I don't know. So how can I, you know, improve in that area? So I said, so what are some things you think if you don't want to ask the teacher that you could do? He said, well, I could watch videos, you know, about the division. And I said, well, that's a good idea. You know, I said, so why don't you do that if you don't feel comfortable asking the teacher? And so he said, well, it just takes a lot of time. You know, I just don't know. So, but he just got this new hairstyle, right? So he's got this shortcut and he's trying to get these waves in. So he has been doing all these different things for these waves. And I said, well, look, I said, so how did you learn how to take care of your hair with this new hairstyle? He said, oh, I was watching videos. And I said, okay. I said, so you're watching videos for your hair. I said, so, and that's helping you. So why is it that you don't want to watch videos for your math? You know, I said, I've already been in fifth grade, passed it, graduated, got my degree. I said, so who is really going to be hurting if you don't pass your math? Is it the teacher, your classmates? And so he was like, it'd be me. I said, well, you might want to reprioritize what you have time to watch or what you want to watch. But I say that whole story to say there was a time where I would have been like, oh, you're not doing good in math. Oh my goodness, honey, he's not understanding it. What can we do? But I am just at a point to where kids have problems that are their age appropriate problems. And if I step in and don't even ask him the questions, to even let him think for himself, I'm going to be sitting here rescuing him for every situation. And I don't have time for that. You know
Totally,
what I mean?
totally. And I mean, that's because you have so many children, which is really cool. I
Mm-hmm.
think one of the things that life has given you is the opportunity to see, okay, I have to use mama life hacks here that are
Mm-hmm.
really healthy in terms of I'm not going to be able to do this with every single child. And some parents don't have that dynamic. And so they
Right.
do sit there with every single child. And the reason I bring this up is because I really want, if there are parents out there right now that can relate to the helicopter parenting. And I mean, oh my gosh, I mean, when my son was 3 and entered, he was in a little Montessori preschool. And I was like the parent stalker. I was in the bushes, like looking through, like, so I have been there, like I know, right?
I'll
But
tell you.
here's what I also know. I had the opportunity to do my pre-doctoral internship at a university, and my clients were young adults, like 18 to 21. And do we have time for one last story?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So,
I know we're over time. Okay.
okay. So I call her very affectionately now. I kind of nicknamed her my Victoria's Secret princess, underwear princess, because
Okay.
her biggest issue was she was buying underwear every week. No, like every week. And I'm like, what is going on? So as I was figuring it out, I'm like, so you're buying underwear because she was having issues with money. She had maxed out
Mhm.
her parents' credit cards. They had cut her off. She didn't have money to do anything, and she was totally stressed about this. And so I was like, what are you spending your money on? And I had her bring in her credit card statements, and we're going through, and I'm like, Victoria's Secret, Victoria's Secret, Victoria's Secret. And I'm like, what is with Victoria's Secret? Like, okay. And it turned out she hadn't learned how to do laundry.
I was
And
just
so,
thinking that's what it was.
she was taking her other clothes to the dry cleaner, but she was embarrassed to take her underwear there. So instead, she would just buy it, copious amounts, and throw them out. Okay, throw them out.
Wow.
And I
She could
tell that
even wash them by hand, right?
I tell that as an extreme example,
Right.
but I feel it's extraordinarily pervasive. And if you speak with anyone who's in the college, university, they see all these parents calling up now. And I mean, 20 years ago, people would be embarrassed if their parent called their professor to try to, get a better mark or whatever.
Right.
But the thing that I got to see, because I had all those crisis clients that were young adults, was how ill prepared, how anxious they were, how stressed they were, how unconfident they were. And even though on their Facebook pages, on their Instagram, on their Twitter, they're like, yeah, doing this, doing that. Really, at the end of the day, inside, they were struggling. And I have never seen, and I mean, it's off the charts where we're going with mental health with our young adults. It's off the charts, and it scares me. But the part that gives me hope is when I have moms look at more prevention and get them when they're 2 or 11. And I mean, it's never too late, but it is a lot easier the earlier you do it.
So true. Well, it's just like having a toolkit, or survival kit. If you have the tools available or a first aid, right? It just helps you have a spirit of calm when you do have some of those issues. And you know that you have something that's going to help you get over that, but a lot of times when you're dealing with the mental wellness or mental health issues, it's after it has gotten so far gone that it's explosive and it affects not just you, but other people who are there in the crossfire, so to speak. And so you're trying to manage something that you're not familiar with. And then you've got all these stray bullets, so to speak, that are flying everywhere else, affecting people as well. So having that mindset to recognize that is really key. But you don't know what you don't know. So I'm saying, there would have been the time with my older children who it's like, oh, you're getting a 48. Well, you know what? We're Atkins. We don't get 48s. You're going to sit here, you're going to do your homework, but now I'm like, you know what? Let him decide what his values are. And if they are very far off the beaten path, then it's like, look, okay, well, if you decide that you don't want to pass this class or whatever, one of the consequences are you're not going to have the video game, or you're not going to have these things on top of not having time to study your division, right? So all these things are going to be happening around you. So then, you're kind of leaning them on the way that you want them to go. But at the end of the day, recognizing that you can't control people. And that's part of the thing, is to be the best version of yourself and inspire them to want to do something different. So I've learned it's so much easier to work with their energy. But when it comes to the excuses, it's like, look, don't come to me with excuses, because I'm not going to be your cheerleader on that. If things are going to be hard, so you need to choose your hard. It's either going to be hard if you're repeating the same grade, or it's going to be hard for you to get out of this grade. It's up to you. So which one do you want to do?
Which I love, because I don't think enough parents really hold their children accountable. Because
Right.
I feel that certain privileges are earned in terms of,
Right.
you want more, and it's even more important now during this pandemic, because I
Yes.
think more than ever our children are in bubbles, quite literally
Right.
are in bubbles, and so I don't think they're given as much opportunity to be independent, to and interdependent. It's not just about being independent, it's about being your mention about your grade 5 um, son,
Mhm.
not asking his teacher. Okay, so if you go through life afraid to ask people for help, I've done it, you've done it. Really, what does that look like? If and alternatively, if you get, because it's funny, I've been working with my son on this one too, because he was doing a math online. Now he's back at school, but anyways, to say, okay, but do you think it might be a shortcut to actually talk with your teacher about it? And he's a lot older, but suddenly he was like, oh, well, actually, I got on the phone with them, and within 15 minutes, I had it. I'm like, wow, so it worked pretty great for you. Eureka. Okay, cool. But it's like learning those life skills. I know I could go on and on about it, but it's learning those life skills and having them embedded into our parenting
Right.
is more important than ever, because life isn't just a straight path these days. And
So
that's
true.
why I feel like, whether you use the smart mom path or you use a path that works for you, but if you don't have a path, you need a path to shield you and be insurance, your
So true.
personal insurance against all those crazy things that happen in our life. Because that snow globe, I am sure, is going to shake again. And I don't know if it'll be finances, a death in the family, but at
Right.
some point,
Right.
we all have it, right?
So true. I love that. And I think, what my own journey has taught me is that, there were 3 times where I was physically ripped away from the home in a hospital. And, whether I felt I controlled that or not, it's not the issue. But when I look through the lens of my children, it's like, they weren't ready for that. I'm a stay home mom, taking them to practice, helping them with their homework. And then boom, I'm gone, 3 separate different occasions. And for that, I just say, I'm not going to always be there for whatever reason. So why would I cripple them to think that everything has to go through me? I mean, it was just
Mhm.
ludicrous looking back, And so now it's like, I'm on the other side. It's like, hey, I'm not going to be here. You have a mouth. You have an age appropriate problem.
Yeah.
I am not going to fix this for you. So you're going to decide and you're going to follow through and have the accountability. So as it stands, I appreciate you bringing this to me. But then it's like, you didn't just get a 48. Why are we just having this conversation? Because it might not even got to be a 48. You
Totally.
see what I'm
Totally.
saying?
And what I'm hearing from you that I think is so important, it is like going back to what I was talking about, it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to raise a mom. It's
Mm-hmm.
expanding those supports
Yes.
and scaffolding it so it
Mm-hmm.
supports our children so they have other people in their lives.
So
So
true.
it's not just, the sun rises and sets on the mama. As much
Right.
as that's wonderful, and again, the ego says, yes, here
Yeah.
I am, the mother. No, like I think sometimes, I mean, this sounds crazy, but sometimes we put ourselves, I have this vision of being in the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah.
And there is Michelangelo did this incredible one. I think it's called the Pieta, which is the
Mm-hmm.
Virgin Mary. And I think sometimes we hold ourselves to being like, oh, here we
Yeah.
are again, perfect hair done. And
Right.
I mean, we don't say it, but we act like it.
So
And
true.
and then the crippling, like I really feel that we handicap our children.
Mm-hmm.
We can handicap
Mm-hmm.
our children by not giving them the opportunities to fall sometimes safely under a
Right.
roof, giving
Right.
them and having the conversations at the dinner table, at whenever, those teachable moments.
Mhm.
And it takes effort. It's a lot
Right.
easier to stick them in front of an iPad.
Right.
It's so much easier. But let me tell you, it is not easier down the road.
So true.
And
So
that's
true.
and that's when, I've had parents bring in, their 15-year-old, 16-year-old to my office saying, fix her, fix her.
Right.
I had one, I remember I went out to the waiting room to get my next client, and there's a parent there, a mother, like so upset. And other people in the waiting room were like, and I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to have a mother and their daughter. And she's like, she's in the car. She won't come in, And so here I am talking through a windshield
Wow.
to this until I could get her in. But I'm like you say, that 48, that did not just happen yesterday, you know,
Exactly.
right? So the sooner that us moms can say, okay, I need to change this and I really want to live my best life and I want to be the mother my kids deserve to have,
So
not
true.
from a sacrificing perspective, but
Mhm.
from that I can have joy and peace within my own heart. Not
Mhm.
all the time, but that's my default.
Yeah. And I think too, the whole thing is that, showing them how to deal with obstacles.
Mm,
I mean, it's easy for them to say, okay, I'm doing my part. I have good grades. But, what happens when you do have a challenge? What happens if your grades aren't reflective of what you would like them to be? There's work you got to do to that. So people just think, oh, well, I got good grades last year. I'm just going to get good grades. But your work has to increase. You're learning different material. What habits did you have last year that you might want to build on? Did you study before you went to bed? Maybe study a little bit early before school starts, whatever that looks like.
mhm.
Having that time to reflect and continue to build. But it's just like as adults, we think, oh, you know what, this business I did last year, it was profitable, so I can just automatically start a new one and it's going to do the same thing. But you don't even know what your strengths are. If you had the right audience for this, you don't do any of that. You just think, oh, I was successful over here, so I don't need any help. I can do this, when you're dealing with a totally different product or service, so we can have that same issue later in life if we don't really resolve it.
Totally. And
Hmm.
Lachelle, I think it's even more important now. 2017, the word of the year was selfie. And
Mm-hmm.
so we are raising our kids in a selfie era. And so to not where, you know, so many of them, when I ask them, like, if you ask them right now, what do you want to do when you grow up? Have you thought about it? You know, they're like, oh yeah, I want to be a YouTube star. I want to be a reality TV show. I want to be, you know, I want to be
Instagram famous.
a
Yeah.
basketball player. And, you know, and you're like, okay. And so I think, you know, there's that, so many parents are like, rah, rah, I'm your cheerleader, which is
Mm-hmm.
great. But to keep feeding the selfie beast is a
Right.
real problem. And it's a
Yeah.
problem for your child down the road.
Yeah.
They often aren't as likable to other
Right.
people because
Right.
you're feeding the beast of the ego of like,
Right.
right? And so I think that's why when you bring that part up of, you know, where can we help them? Oh, I know. I just did a video. I was quite excited about it. It was on homeschooling, but I was talking about what is the one homeschooling extracurricular that is missing from a lot of homes, and it is an absolute essential. And so many parents are like, okay, we've got them in soccer and baseball, we got them in music lessons, we got them in taekwondo, we got them in basket weaving. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, maybe that's come down a bit because of COVID, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that so many of us get on that extracurricular treadmill. I think the biggest extracurricular that is missing in so many homes and is so needed are chores. Like seriously, like that is the number one extracurricular you should be thinking of. And
So
it
true.
wasn't, isn't it? And
So
it
true.
wasn't long ago where like home economics was a real
Class.
it was a
Yeah.
real class, and also a real respected profession. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like if it's a whole,
Yes.
and I think that's why a lot of moms are so, especially the stay-at-home moms, are
Yeah.
so hard on themselves because we've
Mhm.
put that down here, and it's
Right.
like so beyond us. And I mean, even if you're a parent that has a cleaner, I'm like, with a lot of my clients, I'm like, you get your child job shadowing your cleaner because, and working from the bottom up, people don't appreciate what they don't value and what they put their time into.
So true. I'd love that. And just the whole dynamic of being a team player. I mean, we still struggle with chores. And I think that's something that, you're always, to some extent, going to have in phases. As
Mm.
kids get older and they appreciate certain things, having clean clothes and all these kind of things, and they begin to see the dynamics of the cycle of how they get clean and folded and all this kind of stuff, but they're not going to understand that or value it, like you said, if they're not involved in the process.
No,
That's just like, hey, it's like, look, if I'm cooking, you can come in here and put your dish away. You can, uh, help put the food away in the refrigerator after we're done eating. Everything is just not like, oh, okay, I'm showing up to eat and that's it. Everything else is gonna go magically away. They have to understand from a young age how they can contribute in order for but yeah, I mean, I think all moms kind of go through that where it's, we get the idea of serving, so it's like, let me serve my kids their food, let me take the dishes away, and then later on 2 or 3 years down the road we're like, nobody's helping me in the kitchen,
totally. And it's
but we created that.
resentment. Totally, we did. You know, like, and I actually I shared that in my first book. One of the things I said that a lot of moms do is it's like a child, especially when they're 3, they'll be like,
Hmm.
me help, me help, me help, you know, or the vacuum. I mean, the vacuum is the most exciting thing on the planet for a
Right.
3-year-old, right? They're like, woo,
Hmm.
you know. So me help, what do we often say? Oh no, you go and run and play.
Right.
And then fast forward 5 years, you're like, excuse me, would someone help me around here? Like, am I the only one? We don't have a house elf. I'm not Bobby the house elf. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but then we're resentful about it. And it's hard
Exactly.
work. It is hard. There's no question that's not, but it's so much harder later.
It is. That now that's a great example, because we get this idea that it's going to take forever, they're going to play, but when you allow them to help, you can sit back and enjoy it. One, it's like, hey, I just give them that task and I can go off and do something else. Or we can watch and cringe, but if we kind of give them the space and then come back, just walking away and getting a new perspective and coming back, you're just in a better place. Okay,
Totally.
you did great. The only thing is I saw you missed a couple spots, and then they're fine. It's positive feedback, and the cycle continues. But if you're there and it's like you're not doing it right, let me do it and all this. I mean, it's not a teachable moment. That's
It's
pleasant.
no, indeed not. Monster Mom has entered the building. Be
Right.
very afraid.
So true. Well, this has just been wonderful. As you can see, I could go on for
I
another
know,
hour.
I know. Oh my gosh, cut us off. Where's the bouncer? The
Exactly. So
parent bouncer we need.
what is the best way for the audience to get a hold of you?
The best way would be joyfullyparenting.com or through
Mhm.
Facebook on
Okay.
Joyfully Parenting. And my name is Kelly Nault. And if anybody's out there right now who wants to do the mom type quiz, you can find it both on my Facebook page and also on joyfullyparenting.com, because that's a pretty cool way to get some fun insight into your own mama personality. I love it.
Mhm. Love that.
It's
Well,
been
thank you.
so wonderful being here. I just thank you. And I would love to be a bug on the wall in your house sometimes, just to watch all of the fun and craziness. I think it would just be a blast.
Yes, it is crazy. Yeah, so sometimes there are times that people get to see a snapshot of that, because I'll be doing a video or something and you see this hand come across the screen, or one of them does a cameo appearance. But yeah, it is a lot of fun, but I think, you bring up the selfie, and I think it's so funny how my kids will snap away with selfies, but the minute I ask them to come on a video, oh no, no, I don't want to be on camera. And I'm thinking, now you're spending 10 hours a day doing some selfies and you can't come over here and say anything. So that clears the room real quick. I'm like, oh,
Okay.
okay, I'm getting ready to do a call. Okay, I'm out of here. So yeah, that's how it works around here. But and then I try to include them, because it's like, I'm on camera a lot, but yeah, they don't want to be bothered. So yeah, that's the story of what is going on with me. But I have really enjoyed our conversation, and I think it was some great nuggets. So I encourage you guys out there watching to reach out to Kelly and find out where you are so that you can improve, get with a coach, or get some added insight so that you can move forward to be a better version of yourself. So reach out to her and check on the links that she provided, and get started on that journey. We are approaching the end of 2020, moving into 2021. So take this time to think about, do you want to be in the same place next year? And if that answer is no, do the things that you need in order to move forward and be a better version of yourself. So thank you guys for watching, and you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day.